is because of Professor Tom Atkinson that was in university. I worked with him at the laboratory in brain function when I was in university studying brain activity in schizophrenic patients. And he told me everything there is. And when he taught it, it was so passionate and so intricate. I was like motivated to pursue this career. And I asked him, like, I want to do this, what I did. That's what he told me to pursue my education. So from then, I applied everywhere around the world. That has the same poster that we have, the accessibility to opportunities to technology that we can use to control productivity in white and the photometry. So also you can use these LED light particle spectrum to record your activity. And you can actually target different surface to understand how these brain functions. And you can translate that in patients, you can treat them better. So I found very small niche, right, by having a one mentor that tells that only the right information in the most conventional manner, there was a video. And I have it on the book. However, when I'm having students, so if you apply around the world, you find a lot of colleges. Number one, the university doesn't know you. They only know you through your paper. So they're like, Shan Sohail, bachelor's, no master's. Yeah. Like they only pay the authors. Now, alhamdulillah, I went to Alameen, and I think I've got over 20 applied. And I got something to one in Germany, one in Saudi, one in Libya. Now, now, another advice I can give to those who are giving is apply or go to as many conferences as you can. Right? Go to the conference that you find very interesting. Like, inshallah, I'm going to this very selection conference in Tokyo, inshallah. Like, you can meet a lot of professionals, EEG, MRI, you name it. You talk to these professors, you tell them what you're interested in. And inshallah, like, even 100 of them, you resonate with this one. And from there, you can actually start study programs or courses on work with each other. And that's what happened to me. I was in university. And my boss came over. It's a little closer. It's hard to hear. So my boss, my current boss, I took at UFT, he came over to Japan to give a talk. And subhanAllah, this conference was only for the engineers. And like biology major came in, I had all biology knowledge, all the research knowledge. And his presentation was only on that biology. So I was only blessed with new ideas. So from then on, I stood up. And I spoke to him. It was very interesting, by the way. He wanted to hire me. So you know me. Everything went good. So I've been spending about 7 months in repetition. But overall, in 2 weeks.
Okay, really.
Hey, Assalamu Alaikum everyone. I believe the question you were asking about my academic kind of background. Yeah. I mean, I'll probably echo what Brother Daniyal said. Much of it was what was happening outside of the classroom. So my medicine kind of trajectory was what we would call traditional. The person who does undergrad, from there goes straight to medical school, from there does residency, so that's like the traditional student in medicine. That was kind of my pathway. But my undergrad was in kinesiology, study of human movement, and I was like, yeah, I like sports, let me go pursue this. And I did the degree, and that was very interesting, but obviously I'm on a very different path now. And I think a big part of it was that throughout my undergraduate career, yeah, kinesiology was cool, but it was also part of a lot of grassroots organizing movements, specifically working with the Muslim community in Hamilton. And that's when I saw a lot of the problems that our community was facing. Specifically, I worked a lot in like anti-Islamophobia work, and experiences of discrimination and things like that. And I saw a lot of mental health issues that were really largely unaddressed. So when I got into medical school, and I thought I would go into like orthopedic surgery or sports medicine or something of that nature, because I was like, yeah, I did kinesiology. Within a few months, I had a bit of an existential crisis of why am I here? What does it even mean to be a surgeon? Why do I want to be a surgeon? Which is cool. We need Muslims in every field. But for me, it very much felt that it was ego-driven. I'm like, yeah, I'm surgeon, but it was just for my own awareness. That's really the only explanation for it. And once I actually thought about what I'm, experienced in what my community actually needs, then the only answer was mental health care. So that's how I ended up in psychiatry. And that's how I ended up, part of the Stanford Muslim mental health lab as well, where I do research. Again, in Muslim mental health. So that's kind of my focus. And inshallah, I'm happy to talk more about that throughout the conversation.
So today I came in and I talked to Brother Zayn over there at Titsay there. I was just for 2 years and attending and listening to all the great speakers here. He's like, brother, you want me to become a panel speaker today? I'm like, sure. So last minute I got around to a panel earlier. Hopefully, in our discussion here today, I can impart some helpful tips and advice as it is related to being a profession. So the question is about my journey. Well, it's not so unique in the sense that I didn't come out of undergrad doing music or arts and then jumped into law school, because that would be pretty unique, right? Although we have people in that category. For me, I went into undergrad, did political science, partly because I was, like a lot of other people, I was motivated and kind of inspired by Barack Obama. This was when he became the Senate, he had a Senate position, he was running for, for presidency. And I really believe that's a great example of change, because, yes, we can. I'm going to go into politics. I stayed 4 years, undergrad at York University. Very soon I realized it's so different. But then I realized, questions, one of the things about political science is you come across questions that are really fundamental to your identity. Where do you come from? You start to think about that. Very much like philosophy. I took on the task of learning who I am. I'm supposed to be a Muslim. Perhaps to the extent that I'm told to pray, fast, and then I'm supposed to be allowed to what did that mean? So those questions kind of were burning inside of me, and I wanted to go into further, finding out the answer to those questions. So then my professors kind of encouraged me, Afghanistan is a really interesting case, what's going on there for 40 years. You should do masters. So they really motivated me, pushed me towards them. Okay. So I had, that's why I did masters in political science, focused on the human crisis in Afghanistan, which made me, learn a lot about why I am here in Canada. But going through that process, I soon realized that I need to think about my future in terms of politics is not really a secure career, because every cycle of elections, there's no guarantee what's going to happen to you. And also because, politics as a career, you don't really have much in terms of special skill. But I like the academics, I like the, discussing theories, politics. So I wanted something that would balance that, and I found that to be in law. So law provided me the perfect balance of academic work as well as something that's more tangible, specialized. So I decided to go to law school, and the process is such that you have to study for the LSAT, you have to get your grades ready in order to build an application package, send it to the various schools you want to go into. And I did that, I went to law school, 3 years in law school. After 3 years, you have, a year, 10 months of experiential training. And
Inshallah, Jazakumullahu Khairan for all of you guys' inputs. That was really valuable and we got to learn a lot and get a new perspective on everything. Inshallah, so our second question would be, this is, I feel like a lot of class you deal with this interpersonal conflict as well. It's, how can we keep our faith and Islamic principles at the forefront throughout our educational journeys and even extending into their professional careers? Sorry, Brother Maiwand Noor again.
That's a great question. You know, in high school, one of the unintentional things that happened to me that was greatly beneficial was that I got interested in philosophy. Now, I got interested in philosophy before I knew anything much about Islam. Like I mentioned earlier, you know, prayers to the extent that I could, fasting to the extent that I could, but beyond that, very limited knowledge. But taking philosophy in high school, you know, it inspired or invoked certain questions in my life that I wanted to explore further. You know, our professor or our teacher, philosophy teacher, tasked us in one of my philosophy classes with this program or this assignment where you will choose a philosopher or an ideology and you come into a round table and debate. I was thinking, well, what should I, choose? Well, I'm Muslim. Let's learn what Islam is all about. Let's see if I can hold my own. And that process kind of started, the journey of me going into becoming a student of knowledge as far as our Islamic tradition is concerned. So I don't know if a lot of people have that experience where, some people call it like a midlife crisis. Something that happens, you pause and then you ask, okay, who am I? That happened to me in high school, so I'm really grateful for that. So I have been thinking about my identity as a Muslim since high school up until now. And it's just been growing. How can I represent or be myself as a Muslim in everything that I'm doing in my career? So one of the hardest decisions for me when I was in law school was, what area of law should I practice that would best align with my Islamic values? Corporate law was quickly crossed off, right? For those who don't know, corporate law, it's a great profession, but let's just say that there are a lot of ethical dilemmas there that you have to deal with, and I didn't want to deal with that. So, in almost all professions, but certainly in law as well, there is opportunity to let your values as a Muslim show in your work. Thinking about the bigger picture, the benefit of the work that you do, and the way you do it. So, as a lawyer, it's challenging because sometimes you're supposed to take a position, certainly in the criminal defense world or a crown world where you're faced with, with somebody who has been charged with a crime and you're tasked with applying the law with which you don't really agree with because it doesn't align with your Islamic values. So it's challenging, but there are ways to do it, and there are lawyers, Muslim lawyers who do that. So my view is that one of the beautiful things about Islam is that you can do anything in this world from, while being true to your tradition, to your religion, to your values.
I think you made a really interesting point about midlife crisis, or now it's more popular is actually a quarter-life crisis, right? When people start to think about who they are, where they are in the world, and how everything works all together. I think there's a lot of people in this room who are either coming up to that point where they're thinking about it, or maybe they're thinking about it right now. Inshallah, you won't have to go through a situation
stuck with for the rest of my life. The thing about the identity of being Muslim is that it's not something that can just be left at home. You will have to bring it out into the public. I mean, even if it's just something that's affecting what you're doing in jail, there's these identifying factors. You're taking break before some different things. They're not something that you can be able to keep away just at your home. So embrace it. Embrace the difference. We're in a pretty fortunate situation now where there is still a negative climate for sure, but it is shifting to allow for more opportunities to be able to show their differences. And our differences are beautiful. And don't be afraid that just because you're different, that you shouldn't show it, because this is a big trap. When you go out into the world, be proud of your Islamic and you understand this is an academic conference, right? Understand the academia behind Islam and your history and as a Muslim, right? We have so many opportunities here. We should be really honing in on these opportunities, really mastering our skills and being the best versions that we can be and excelling in our fields so that we can give back to others so that they can go into the areas and rooms that we weren't able to go into. So that's sort of what I would
So it brought brains. So, I mean, as with everything in life, you're really supposed to look at things with an Islamic perspective. So you need to have your Islamic glasses on before you approach any kind of issue or any kind of field. And mental health care is, of course, the same thing. So how that looks like in terms of how I place Islam in the forefront of my mind, especially in the field that I'm in. I mean, I was honestly, a big part of why I was inspired to go into psychiatry was looking at some of Dr. Daniyal Kashi's work. So she's the founder of the Islamic Symposium of Professionals, amongst other things. But, she spoke about a lot of things that, when you look back, mental health care was always there. Mental health care was always there in the Muslim community, right? Like when you look at the story of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and you read about Ameen husband, it's called Ameen husband for a reason. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam lost his uncle and Khadija, Rahmatullahi. And you look at some of the dua that we make every day in your al-Quran, like Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min al-hammi wal hazan. Why would the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam be making dua against the ham, which is like preoccupation, you might say anxiety, and hazan, or sadness, or depression, you might say. Why would the Prophet make these dua? You think a little bit, mental health care was always there. Or the idea of mental disease was always there. And then, a couple of centuries later, Abu Zayd al-Badri is describing OCD, he's describing phobias, he's describing things that weren't really described in the Western world up until like maybe 100 years ago, maybe 200 years ago, right? So Islam was always at the forefront of these things, and we want to continue doing that. And one of the problems with the Western paradigm is you have mental health and you have physical health, and they intersect between the two. Of course, we agree with that. But a huge missing component is the ruh, or the nafs, or spiritual health, which obviously again will intersect with the other two. Whereas they see that the Venn diagram made of two components, we see that there's a third component that's just completely absent. And unfortunately, within our own community, that also poses a problem because sometimes we don't see the mental health. Mostly the physical health, the spiritual health, and the mental health component isn't there. So having Muslims in the field of mental health care is quite important because then you're able to see all the components. You understand how they intersect. You understand how, depression may have a component that is mental and may have a component that is spiritual. But you need to address both in order to actually properly address it. And subhanAllah, in many instances where in my work I have dealt with situations where I recognize it's important for me to be here. It's important for Muslims to be here. And I'll share two very, very quick stories. One of them was, there was a young girl who has OCD scrupulosity. So OCD, or obsessive compulsive disorders, generally either you have obsessions that are really intrusive thoughts and you go into the cycle of having to obsess about them, and compulsions, which like you do things to relieve that obsession. And scrupulosity means it's religious related. So she had these intrusive thoughts of, stuff about Allah is not real, or Allah is not evil, things like that. Really intrusive thoughts that were just distressing her because she was Muslim, she didn't believe these things. She did well on medications for a while, and her parents were like, "You're doing great, you can stop your medications." And unfortunately, that led to her presenting to our emergency department. And while I was presenting this case to my supervisor, one of the medical students who was sitting there kind of smirked and made this snide comment around, this is actually just normal distress from the ultimate realization that God doesn't exist. Like, she's atheist, clearly, and her sense is that, well, she's just distressed because she's finding out that God isn't real. Thankfully, my supervisor was a mental health professional. My supervisor was obviously a psychiatrist, and was able to step in and comment on that. And another situation that I wasn't directly involved in, but there was a Muslim brother came to CAMH with psychosis. He has schizophrenia, and he was deemed incapable of consented treatment. So if you cross a certain threshold, you're unable to even realize what's happening around you, and somebody has to make the treatment decisions for you. You can't, advocate for yourself. So normally we have so his mom was made the substitute decision maker, but then she said no to treatment. She said, well, no, he doesn't need medications. He doesn't have a mental health condition. He's just possessed by a jinn, so he needs ruqya, and that's what he needs. He doesn't need antipsychotic medication. Staff psychiatrist was like, okay, I'll try again tomorrow. Try it again, same statement. Try it again the next day, same thing. She's like, no medication. And because of the way the law works, the healthcare act works, you can't just give somebody medication without somebody's consent. So, and that psychiatrist is not even Muslim, but she came in, she said, okay. She called a local mosque. She said, hey, you guys having a man that does ruqya? And they're like, yeah, who is this? And she told me, okay, you just pull up to CAMH, I have a patient here, they're saying this is what they need. So they brought him out to CAMH, they did the ruqya, and afterwards the brother was like, okay, I guess I'll try medications. So at that point, I'm laying up there. But it made me, astutely aware of the importance of having a religious lens on things, especially when there's a situation where there's a huge overlap, right? Like obviously OCD is scrupulosity, right? Having OCD specifically about like I need to keep doing like 30 times, 40 times. That is an even more apparent situation where having this lens is important. But across the spectrum of all mental disorders, because of this lack of spiritual health, this lack of understanding of the world in the Western paradigm, you bring that lens into important. And I want to make it clear that you're not going, if you have clinical depression, yes, relies on Allah is important, yes, making dua is important, yes, Quran and these things are important, but we can't cut off the line there. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created, antidepressants are a tool, for example, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has placed on the earth for treatment. And seeking professional mental health care as well as spiritual care are both very important.
Jazakumullahu Khairan Katheera.
Right, so the clinical side, the research side of things. So, to my colleagues here, the two experts use different salaries of the show. So, the question was about how do we keep our kids there forefront throughout the career. So that is very good question. Something that in a very, very organized country and very, very organized country, right? So everyone has a very similar mindset. So if you stand down, they won't have you down, right? And it's very difficult to advocate for your religious rights. For example, you want to pray, you're fired. Or my colleague of mine, he's a truck driver, he asks his boss to type a Juma, you're fired. So that's the kind of environment we grew up in. And even for non-Muslims in general, living in Japan is very, very difficult. You could speak Japanese, you could know all the culture. And Japanese generally will know recognize you as one of after 40 years, 40 years, you're foreign. So in that very extreme environment, you when you're growing up, you just feel great to adhere to where you are. Right? And that was my upbringing. And my mother was a comment. I was a little bit, she asked me all interesting questions, like why you here, what's going on. So I never had a form of crisis or form, but it was instilling more than. So as I grew up, the only question I had was much respect. Right? So like, actually, personal knowledge is a weapon for all things. You can use the knowledge to navigate people, even God. Right? That's the view of the most beneficial God. Yeah. So, like, I believe I'm paraphrasing relation of Allah. Like also as Allah said, the best of you are the one who is the most beneficial to the others. Yahweh knows if you possess so much knowledge, you can help you. Alhamdulillah. In the work that I'm doing, I choose this particular path out of all the path I have. Like, I can study like universities, or I can study research. Alhamdulillah, this kind of opportunity, alhamdulillah, I've never seen in my life, where you can actually deal with patients and all patients. At the same time, you can work on that. You do your own research on your own, on your subculture, on your own anything. And you can complete that to patients, optimize it in a very short amount of time. This kind of research takes decades if you don't have a corroboration. But if you do that, you have to have you have the depository to do that and directly help patients. We have, like, let's say, last night I thought of a problem. I said to my boss, okay, I have an installation problem. If there is a patient coming Monday, okay, let's do it. And if it's beneficial, we can actually have a conversation on how we can really, push this forward. Now you're listening. Now I'm looking. Alhamdulillah. I'm pursuing knowledge. I'm benefiting people. So like, I'm actually the center of like, and moreover, in the particular field that I'm in the field of Islamic Symposium, the presence of Muslims is so good. I'll leave myself, and I'm not a member of Brother Farman, mashallah, Professor Abdul Aziz, for his PhD. That's the only people we have. And why is this important? Is when we have a lab meeting, you're making narratives. When we write papers, the ideas that we have, how should we make this narrative in a way that people can, like, the layman can understand them? Because if laymen recently, they will have a very false as well, things like, creation perspective, atheistic perspective, right? This is actually control narrative, right? And this narrative are, like, the result we put forward is objective as it can be, but as an underlying narrative is subjective, and it subscribes to the philosophy. Now, why I'm saying this is really Muslim presence and Muslim laboratories in this particular field, right? So that we can actually move forward in more creation's perspective, which has been done by a lot of Christian scholars in the States, right? So let's look at them because we should move forward to this inshallah. So to end this, I'd like to encourage look into what you want. If you like research, go for it. You want to talk to me like a sure.
Jazakumullahu Khairan. For our next question, how can you guys, like, what's one advice that you guys would give to yourselves if you could go back to the path? Like, one mistake that you maybe have made in the past that you wish you did differently. Maybe one advice to us, younger Muslims who are in academia or in university or doing the workforce. What's one thing you would give us advice on what you would change about, a mistake that you made that you wouldn't have done that way? And certainly, Shan Sohail.
I would say, I'll tell myself to trust Allah be somewhere else, you can move forward. Right? If you do everything due diligence, if you keep moving forward, there's nothing to be anxious about. You're trusting the whole design of the whole thing. So that's the entry advice I would give to myself if I were to go somewhere. So.
Yeah, I think in terms of advice to myself, I would try to be more aware of my community's needs earlier on. So I guess that probably falls back to more general advice for myself and first and foremost with everybody here is to always be hyper aware of your intention. What is your need and what you're doing, right? And I think sometimes, you might identify your intention as, well, I want to help the Muslim community. Even that is not fully developed intention. What does that mean? Why do you want to help the Muslim community? There are, layers of intentions beyond that, and you should be hyper aware of that. Specifically when because I did medical school and I'm in residency, I get a lot of people who are asking, like, how do I get into medical school? What do I need to do? How do I choose? How do I optimize my application? All of those questions. Why do you want to be in that? All very important questions. We absolutely need more Muslims in medicine. But I find that very rarely do people actually sit down and think about why do they want to go into medicine. And of course, having a stable career, having income, all that is excellent, right? All those are important. But beyond that, once you're in medicine, you have to make a choice about what specialty you're in. You haven't really thought that far. And certainly, that's exactly what happened to me. I hadn't really thought that far. What is your intention? And that's one of the point of what does your community need as going to come in, right? What is lacking? Where are the gaps? And how can you fill them? Don't do any heroics, right? Like if you really don't like mental health care, you don't see yourself as a psychiatrist, then don't pursue that. But if you're good with your hands, you think you could be a surgeon, okay, how can you use that to benefit the Ummah? Of course, your local community, but also the Ummah more broadly. So these are very good questions that I think it took me a while to develop this awareness that, and of course, Islamic State to renew your intention. And I never really fully understood that. My intention is this, and that's why I'm doing it. But, as time passes, the more I'm hyper aware of why it's called renewing your intention. That's because your intention sways very, very rapidly, right? In the second that you're like, yes, I want to do medical school because I want to help the community, it could be just, a couple of days later that you're hyper-focused on the salary that you'll make, you're hyper-focused on, potentially meeting somebody, like, oh, I want the status, right? These are the reasons why I'm pursuing medicine. But ultimately, whoever performed Israel, the Prophet for the sake of the Prophet and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then his hijrah was for that. And if you did hijrah because you wanted to, people say that this is so and so, or that you would meet somebody or for marriage or whatnot, then that was why you did hijrah. And you're not even going to be hijrah of that if your intention was not in the right place. So my overall advice is really to consistently renew your intention and just always ask yourself, why am I doing this? And after you get an answer, ask yourself again, why am I doing this? Because sometimes that initial, superficial level of intention is not fully developed, and there's other stuff underlying it. And of course, look around you, ask around, what does my community need, and try to fill those gaps.
Yeah, there's a lot of problems out in the world, and even, there's these problems that specifically need Muslims to take charge of fixing them because there's gaps in communities, there's barriers to different things. And so I'd like to pick the analogy of building a building. It takes a lot of people to build a building. Not everyone is doing the same job. Some people are putting in a window, some people are putting in a door, some people are laying out these different plans. Figure out what your skill set is and how that contributes towards building the big building, right? Figure that out, really dive into it, and be the best person that you can and excel in that field. So how do you do that? Right? Well, a big part of that is also considering who you keep around you, right? So someone is one because of the and I'm paraphrasing, which is that you're on the beat of your friends. It's very important to look at your team, look at the people that you're not these literal tables, but your friends in your friend groups. Are they motivating you to go into these new places? They don't necessarily have to be in the same field as you, but they do have to, or they should be people who are that same thing. They're holding you accountable and you're holding them accountable. It's very important to surround yourself with the right people. I think that would be maybe the number one tip that I would give anybody who's going into university is to surround yourself with the best people.
I think the advice that I would give myself in the past and you guys who are going through this right now in terms of your career, very similar to what Brother Daniyal said. Just two parts to it. One is avoid distractions. It's easier said than done, especially now. You have the phones, constantly scrolling. You don't realize how much time you waste on things that don't benefit us at all. So if you can do that early on, I can say with a lot of certainty that you will be guaranteed success in your career and life in general. The ability to tune out things that you consider are not beneficial. And how do you know what are not beneficial? You have the Quran. You have guidance, hadith, the Prophet's teaching. Take that and use that as a criteria to kind of categorize what you should do, what's beneficial and what's not. That's one. The other thing that relates more to me in terms of what I would have said to myself had I met myself now from the past is to be grateful in the downs as well as the ups. So what I used to do was, okay, I have an exam, I'm going to pray, Ya Allah, bless me with the ability to pass this exam tomorrow. And then when I would pass the exam, I'm like, yes. And then the next need would come, Ya Allah, bless me with the means to do this, bless me with this. That's what I was used to do. But now, I would be grateful even if I didn't get all those things that I asked for, but I would be even more grateful when I got them. I would do extra rak'ah, for example, right? Extra 2 rak'ah. Just if I had passed my exam, I'd go back, because I know it came from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? I'd go back and pray, Ya Allah, you've granted me. Thank you, thank you. How much of our prayers, our supplications are actually focused on just thanking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Whenever we raise our hands, it's usually me. It's a transaction. So I would tell you guys that put more emphasis on being thankful, because I think Dr. Ibrahim would attest to this, that when you're thankful, it has a real positive impact on your mental health, because it prepares you for whatever that may come that could destroy your life. So those are two big things that I would say are essential.
Jazakumullahu Khairan. To all of you guys there, like the Shan Sohail mentioned, the hadith of Rasulullah, that the best of you are the ones who are beneficial to the people. Alhamdulillah, you guys are really beneficial to all of us here today. You're gathering a gem to the Muslim community and to students us here, inshallah. We hope and pray that, inshallah, one day we can be here, please, advising our younger ones and giving them good advices for their future as well, inshallah. Subhanallah.